this Russian journalist was assassinated in a cafe in St. Petersburg. So he was given a gift. That's him on the screen. He was given a gift, a statuette. So basically a mini statue. He was presented to him, and unbeknownst to him, it was actually a bomb. His name is Vladimir Tatarsky. So that's the name of this journalist who was killed. And of course, you'll have people say, well, he wasn't a journalist. He was a blogger. And then people say, no, he was a mill blogger, which is a military. I don't care. The guy's a correspondent. Yes or no? And then, actually, let me show you the clip before I continue. Look at the cafe, first of all. Look at the damage here. You have 32 people injured. 32 people who could have almost died in this bombing. This is when he was being presented with the gift, allegedly. I can try and zoom in a bit more for you. I don't know if you can see that. It's over here. People are in the way.
Рабочая история.
Да, все, золотой Владимир. Отлично. Ну, ты знаешь, слава богу, тут я гораздо красивее. Да, ну тут просто кубики, все правильно.
There's CCTV footage that caught the explosion. Let me show it to you. When you look at this, I don't know how you can justify this, but they're trying in the West, right? Because he's a Putin supporter, blah 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 blah. This is terrorism. They blew up a goddamn cafe, not in Ukraine, not it wasn't some act of resistance. Again, I'm getting ahead of myself because I'm going to tackle those points in a second. This is the video where they blew the cafe up. I mean, just look at the size of that explosion. This is straight up terrorism. I'll play it again for you. Look at the state of that, the power of that thing. This is not some some random IED that a Ukrainian just happened to build, in their backyard with some ingredients lying around. No. This is very, very high grade military explosive. It's probably C4. I don't know the details of it, but my point is, it's a state actor, right? Only a state actor. Or if we're talking about maybe very, very powerful terrorist organizations, I don't think Daesh wanted to kill this guy, for example. So you have to, the most logical thing is that this is a state actor that killed him. Now, what I want to explain to you, justification in the West of this act of terrorism, I mean, the precedents that this said, look at this. So there's the video. And then right underneath, this person saying, well, he was seen as pro-Putin, right? So they kind of like drop it in there. They put the seed in they plant the seed in your mind. Well, he was seen as pro-Putin, as pro-Wagner, pro-Russian invasion of Ukraine. He smeared his opponents. Just kind of like give you a little taste, like why he deserved to be blown up in a cafe. And this is just one example, right? It's just one example, but another one that I saw was in NBC. I think they were saying, well, there was a death. What do you mean a death? Like, I was assassinated. Why were you trying? They speak in such vague terms all of a sudden, right? Like they can't quite pinpoint what exactly happened. It's not clear to them. Jesus Christ! I mean, look at your newsroom and the budget you have. You can't discern a terrorist attack when you see one. What I want to say here is that 32 people were almost killed. And they're trying to justify this by telling you, oh, he was pro-war. Okay? Here's another example of this. This is from Bell and Pussy.
That's
so
on the fact
listen
that
to what they
it's
say.
More likely to be a Ukrainian operation. He was a legitimate target. He was an officer and an intelligence officer and a propagandist at the same.
So that is false, because he was not an officer of any kind. In the BBC article about him, they literally say that he was neither a Russian official nor a military officer. So this guy has nothing to do with the Russian government or the Russian military. So I don't know where this person on Sky News from Bell and Pussy is suddenly stating he's an officer. No, he's not.
Wouldn't the Ukrainians confine their operations to military sites rather than a cafe in Russia's second city?
Even the guy's like, maybe they should focus on soldiers, like Russian soldiers, instead of a guy in a cafe in Russia. Even he's like perplexed by what is the military value of this?
Well, absolutely, but this is a war of little resemblance to what we've seen before. It's a hybrid war, in addition to being a...
What? No. you've been telling us in the Western media for a year now that this is the biggest war since World War II, and it's the biggest mobilization and military action since World War II. What do you mean it's different? It's a hybrid war. Like, you can kill a few journalists, it depends on the cafe they're in. What does this mean?
A hot war. This cafe, whether or not it was owned by Prigozhin, the owner of Wagner, was a cafe that was used regularly as a sort of a gathering point for Russian cyber warriors that are in fact targeting Ukraine's infrastructure and other organizations.
Nerds like to come with their laptop and chill in this cafe, so that makes it a legitimate military target. Wow, the brains on this one.
Organizations that are linked to the Wagner organizations. So whether or not this was a purely civilian location, one might argue with that.
It's a fucking cafe. What do you mean whether it was a purely... It's literally cafe. You said it's a cafe. Everyone can see it's a cafe. What is the military or strategic value of blowing up a cafe? It's an assassination, man. They're so scared of like just saying the truth.
Now, if this was deliberately targeted attack, which it looks like, I mean, if this statue that we understand exploded that he was presented with in this cafe, this would be the second assassination, would it not, on Russian soil of a senior figure associated with the war in Ukraine?
Listen.
Yes, it would be probably the second and probably the first sophisticated, well-performed operation, because the previous one, at least from the information that has been leaked, did not achieve its target. The target of the previous one was Alexander Dugin, one of the lead ideologists of the Russia imperial state doctrine, somebody who believes that
the Russians have an empire, apparently,
that Ukraine should not exist. Whereas his daughter, who was using his car at the time, who was equally a propagandist, but not in any way as influential as her father, and as much as a legitimate target as her father would have been, was killed.
Wow. So being a thinker or an ideologue, as they say, she's a legitimate target. It's like, we didn't get the guy, but his daughter is just as shitty, so it's okay, we'll take that instead. Listen to these people. Listen to these people who are on Sky News and telling you that it's okay to assassinate journalists or people who just speak that you don't like. I mean, let me put this to you. This is their logic, okay? This is according to their logic. What about Shep Bush? Right? He used to work for Fox, right? What about Tucker Carlson? What about all these people who back in the day supported the war in Iraq, and they supported the war on terror? And the war on terror has caused infinitely more casualties. Like, if you want to compare the scale of it, the bloodbath of it, the refugees, I mean, Jesus, the power vacuum, almost you could call it a genocide from Libya all the way to Somalia to Syria, right? There isn't an Arab country they haven't left alone. Are you saying now that we should go blow up Tucker Carlson while he's having dinner because he supported the Iraq war? What is that what you're telling us? I'm not saying that you should do that. I'm against that. I don't think you should blow up anyone, definitely not journalists. But they are saying that you're a legitimate target if you are pro-war or XYZ. Well, look, man, I can tell you there are a lot more pro-war journalists and pundits in the West than anywhere on the face of this goddamn planet. And you know that, and that's a goddamn fact. Are you saying we should go kill them now when they're in cafes? And just, never mind the civilians around them. It's a legitimate target, right? Like he says. Look at these sick people, man.
This, however, today achieved apparently the intended target. It was a statue that was given to the target, and it exploded and killed only him, while 19...
The target, not, the journalist, no, the target. This is really incredible, like how you can just go on there and justify this stuff and dare you, goddamn dare you, try to justify Palestinian acts of resistance, or Lebanese acts of resistance, like stuff that is like very clearly straight up anti-colonial. If you do that, you're a terrorist. But if you want to blow up Russians that we don't like, that's okay, even if they're journalists. Go ahead.
Other people have been hospitalized, I understand.
How much can we attribute to the theory this could have been by the resistance movement?
That's a word you will never hear when they talk about anything to do with resisting Anglo-Saxon occupation. So they're referring to her, right? So they actually have a selfie together, right? This daughter of Alex Dugan, right? So she was killed, as he just pointed out, instead of, I guess it was meant for her father, right? I don't know really. Maybe they wanted to kill her to send the father into a spiral of grief. That could also that could also be something. But the point is, she was killed, and this guy's saying like, "Oh, she's a legitimate target." Motherfucker, do you see her in uniform? Is she wearing a uniform? Is this a Russian uniform that I'm not aware of? She's a civilian, and she said things you don't like, so she's a military target. There's no strategic value in blowing up a cafe in St. Petersburg. This is terrorism. If an Arab had done that, you would call it terrorism. Why are you pussyfooting around this term? This is terrorism. You blew up a journalist in a cafe and you injured dozens of people. Terrorism, period. With no strategic value, no military value, which makes it all the more pathetic and cruel, right? And they're trying so hard to justify it. Oh, but even the BBC are saying this guy's, he's not in the Russian government or he's not in the military, you know? He has 500,000 followers. And he supports the war in Ukraine. And let me tell you, I have not watched a second of this guy's stuff. The guy who got killed, Tatarsky. And I on purpose. Do you know why? Because it doesn't matter. I don't care what he said. If the guy's a journalist, how are you justifying assassinating him? These two were killed in the last 12 months by they were assassinated, right? Zero strategic value. Here's Pepe Escobar. He says they bomb journalists, don't they? On the assassination of Tatarsky in a St. Petersburg cafe, Ukrainian neo-Nazis have now started a terror campaign against Donbass and Russian military correspondents. This is what they want. They want you to fear opening your mouth. They want to intimidate you, especially, as Pepe pointed out, if you are in that region or from that region. They want to show you and send a message that we will come after you and blow you up. Daesh, they're like ISIS. I mean, what do you want to say? This is Daesh mentality. This is what it is. Pepe also says the terror attack in St. Petersburg, which killed military correspondent Tatarsky, was set up by the main intelligence director of the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. The head of GUR, Budanov, is directly involved. Shades of MI6. Blowback is going to be a bitch. I mean, I have no doubt that MI6 and the CIA at least knew about this stuff, right? And they don't bother stopping them or something because it's meant to terrify you. It's meant to shut you up. It's meant to silence people and scare you. So you just, okay, yes, I'll accept the establishment narrative. Russia bad. Yes, okay. With this logic, we got a lot of pro-Iraq war journalists to get through with. Glenn said here, gee, I wonder who carried out this terrorist attack on a cafe in St. Petersburg, where a Russian journalist was killed as he held an event on the war in Ukraine, along with 12 others who were wounded. Again, afterwards it became 32, actually. 32 wounded. Glenn says, well, I wonder if it might be the same people who murdered Daria Dugina in her car. So again, that's her, right? And then Glenn says underneath, I believe, he says that by the terrorism justifying reasoning of Professor Karam, it would presumably be rational. This is exactly what I was saying. It would presumably, with their logic, not our logic, their logic, be rational, if not noble, to blow up American restaurants and cafes where U.S. journalists and academics are holding events if they were advocates of the war in Iraq, correct? Well, that's what they're saying, basically. So, I don't agree with it, but there you have it. And I think this is very sick that they are trying to kind of like, either sweep it under the rug or like when they talk about it, it's like, you can't really say they weren't a legitimate target, right? Because he's like pro-war and stuff and pathetic. Look, man, if we were talking, you guys know Great Escape? Amazing film, a classic. You know that scene where you have 3 Nazi officers in Paris just sitting outside in a cafe, and then the guy serving them, he pulls out a Sten machine gun. It's got to be a Sten machine gun. It's a classic British issue, and all the resistance in Europe had the Sten gun. And the car comes, and they just unload on these bastards. I can understand that because they're Nazis and they're occupying your country, and they're officers. They're in the army. And I'm not saying it's nice to kill. I don't like killing. But my point is that that is a justifiable act of resistance. Killing a journalist inside Russia is not. Period. This is allegedly the woman who gave or delivered, shall we say, the statue. So they were questioning her and filmed it actually. And here's the video. I don't have anything more than this, but this is what the Russians released.
Понимаю.
За что?
За, я бы сказала, пребывание на месте убийства Владлена Татарского.
Что ты сделала?
Я принесла туда эту статуэтку, которая взорвалась.
А кто тебе передал эту статуэтку?
Можно я попозже расскажу?
So look, man, this is an open lead. Shall we say? We'll get back to this later if there's more information. I think I've seen quite a few images of her. I don't know if it's her. She seems quite uneasy about saying who gave it to her. Some people have a theory that she didn't know that it was a bomb. I don't know, man. You can speculate all you want, but the rest of what we just said, I think, stands firm and tall and is unequivocal. At best, you could say this guy entered Ukraine illegally. He didn't have a visa. He has to be fined and deported, and that's it. It ends there, right? But this stuff, assassinate. I don't understand this. There's so much effort put into causing misery. Those people who survived probably have trauma now, and have to deal with that. And his family, I don't understand the logic of this morally, militarily, strategically. It's just straight up evil terrorism. That's what it is. It's nothing else,